Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating. We're going to examine the massive gap between the everyday pessimism people often feel about Pakistan's developing economy and the astonishing global industrial dominance that is actually operating on the ground right now.
You know, if you spend any time on local forums or just listen to everyday conversations, you've almost certainly heard sentiments exactly like this. No talent is valued, jobs need bribes, and business needs millions. It's a really heavy mindset. And honestly, when you face daily systemic challenges, this kind of frustration feels entirely validating. You feel heard when someone acknowledges that the system is broken. But hang on a second. We have to pause and ask ourselves, and this is exactly what we are uncovering today. Is the reality actually that bleak? Are these everyday grievances painting the full picture? Or is this popular narrative blinding us to some massive, world-class opportunities that are hiding right in plain sight? Let's jump straight into myth number 1, the talent drain versus the global sports powerhouse. So our first piece of source material bluntly says no one values talent here. Everyone is fleeing. It's that textbook brain drain complaint, right? That pervasive feeling that all skill and innovation are just leaking out of the country because supposedly there's no domestic industry left to anchor it. It is super easy to just buy into that. But if everyone with talent is actually leaving and no domestic industry is thriving, who on earth is quietly powering the world's biggest, most lucrative games? Let's look at the facts. Well, check this out. Our source drops a massive truth bomb to counter that narrative. The global sports industry basically runs on Pakistan. We're talking about the FIFA World Cup and major global leagues here. The actual football is being kicked around by the highest paid, most famous athletes on the planet. They're manufactured right there. This is the ultimate disconnect, isn't it? On one hand, you've got this doom and gloom mindset that talent is simply evaporating. But on the other, the objective reality is that a local manufacturing hub completely dominates a multi-billion-dollar global supply chain. Maintaining that global standard year after year takes immense engineering and logistical brilliance. The talent hasn't vanished. It's literally just operating silently in massive industries that the everyday pessimist completely overlooks. Moving right along to myth number 2, the corrupt job market versus global healthcare. Here is another deeply ingrained belief highlighted in our sources. Without nepotism and bribes, getting a job is impossible. The perception here is that merit is completely dead and you can only ever succeed through corrupt back channels. But then, we hit this number, 95%. Just pause for a second and think about the sheer, mind-boggling scale of that on a global level. What could one single country, supposedly crippled by a lack of merit, possibly supply 95% of to the entire planet? This one genuinely blew my mind. According to the data, 95% of global surgeries use instruments made in the city of Sialkot, Pakistan. That means whether it's a complex, life-saving cardiovascular operation in New York, London, or Tokyo, there is a near absolute certainty that the scalpel, forceps, or retractors being used were forged and perfectly crafted by workers in Sialkot. So while people are hyper-focused on local hiring struggles, Sialkot is just quietly sitting there as the undisputed heavyweight champion of global surgical manufacturing. Listen, an industry requiring that astronomical level of international quality control and medical precision is not built on back alley bribes. It's built on a massive, highly skilled workforce. Turns out, you absolutely cannot bribe your way to perfect surgical steel. All right, let's look at myth number 3. Lack of capital versus the silent agricultural revolution. Here's the third major grievance we found. Need millions for business? Where should a poor man go? It really captures that deep feeling of total economic helplessness, doesn't it? The idea that entrepreneurship is this walled-off garden, completely locked away unless you have massive corporate capital. But once again, let's go straight to the hard data. Fourth, number 4 in the entire world. What global ranking could this country possibly hold that completely shatters this narrative of poverty and restricted opportunity? Well, this takes us away from the industrial factories and out into the agricultural fields. Kunri, which is a town in the Sindh province, is the world's 4th largest red chili market. The source material explicitly calls this a silent revolution. We're talking about an absolute agricultural powerhouse, churning out staggering volumes of spice that supply the global food industry every single day.
That defeatist mindset tries to tell you that you need millions of dollars in corporate boardrooms to do anything economically meaningful. The reality? A massive, world-class economic engine thrives right there in Kunri, driven entirely by local farmers, regional traders, and grassroots agricultural entrepreneurs. You really don't need Wall Street millions to join a global supply chain. You just need to tap into the right sector.
Which brings us to our final section, the verdict, stopping excuses and building brands.
Throughout this explainer today, we've seen a really consistent, undeniable pattern. We often become totally hyper-fixated on our limitations. We obsess over the hurdles, the perceived corruption, the lack of immediate capital. And yeah, it's true, those are real challenges. But that hyper-focus completely blinds us to the immense, mind-boggling scale of the industries that are already functioning successfully right under our noses. And that brings us to what our final piece of source material powerfully declares: stop making excuses. Look at Pakistan's size and start making brands. The manufacturing capability, it's clearly already there. The raw agricultural materials are there. The global demand is already being met by these hands. The missing link in the economic chain isn't talent, it's branding. It is time to step out of the shadows as a generic white label supplier to the rest of the world and finally claim the massive premium value of the final branded product. Let's just do a super quick recap of the sheer firepower we've covered today. Powering the global sports and football industry, supplying a staggering 95% of the world's surgical tools, hosting the 4th largest red chili market on Earth. These aren't just hopeful aspirations, guys. These are current, objective facts. This is the incredibly solid foundation that already exists, just waiting to be leveraged. Which leaves us with one final, highly important thought to ponder today. If the world is already running on the silent engines of these incredible local industries, how will you stop making excuses, shift your perspective, and leverage this immense scale to build the next big global brand? The potential is absolutely already there. Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it completely shifted how you view these global supply chains, and I'll catch you on the next one.